pushed in. It's a hard ticket at the movies. Which one will you watch? Let's decide. It's a hard ticket at the movies.
Hello, and welcome back to Hard Ticket, a show where we go to the movies expecting to watch a double feature, only to find that the movies we were planning on seeing together are playing at the exact same time, so now we have a hard ticket to choose between the two of them. I am Jeffrey Boggess.
And I am Tristan Moore.
And we have a special family animated episode for you today. Tristan, why don't you go ahead and kick things off by telling us what our first option is?
Yes, option number A is Lilo and Stitch, classic 2002 Disney animated film. It's a sci-fi comedy family drama kind of thing. Follows what is it? Experiment 626?
626. Originally, they pitched it as 666, but Disney wasn't going for that.
Wow, that's dark. Experiment 626, who otherwise known as Stitch, is a strange alien experiment who is, I guess he's going to be executed or liquidated in some unspecified fashion.
Stitched apart and
ripped apart at the molecular level.
Yeah.
Anyways, he escapes from his captors and lands on Earth in the middle of Hawaii and befriends a local girl named Lilo, who is an orphan. She lives with her older sister. And hijinks ensue. Elvis songs play. It's a fun, beautiful movie.
Aliens are falling out of the sky all over the place.
It's just another typical day in Hawaii.
Stitch is an experiment by the evil Dr. Jamba, who is programmed only for destruction, basically. He's like an angel of chaos, essentially.
Exactly.
And he also can't survive in water. I guess he's like too dense and he sinks.
Yes, they say his molecular density or something like that. But they think he's gonna land in the middle of the ocean, and then they zoom in and he lands in Hawaii. So
what are the odds?
What are the odds? Exactly.
Oh, very nice. Yes.
All right. Option number B, Jeff.
Option number B is a 2010 animated movie from DreamWorks Animation called How to Train Your Dragon. How to Train Your Dragon follows teenage protagonist Hiccup, who lives on the island of Berk, an island full of Vikings who have to deal with invaders that are a little peskier than just your average insects or bobcats. They deal with dragons. The dragons invade the island of Berk on the regular basis and steal their livestock and just generally wreak havoc. So for hundreds of years, the Vikings and the dragons have been at war until one day, Hiccup, during an invasion, shoots down the elusive Night Fury, a dragon that has never been seen and not much is known about, and discovers that the dragon survived his initial encounter where he shot it out of the sky and is now injured and trapped on the island. And he develops a relationship with this dragon after realizing that he just doesn't have a heart to kill the animal. But of course, their friendship is forbidden as culture at Berk prohibits, doesn't necessarily prohibit so much as just doesn't understand how a human and a dragon can have any sort of relationship.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That's a succinct description of How to Train Your Dragon. It's a sociological conflict. It's man versus society.
And, this being the year of our Lord 2025, you are probably aware that both of these movies are having the live-action remake treatment this year,
Goody.
Which I found interesting because they are also, and people might not realize this, but they're both directed by the same directing duo. That would be Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois. They specifically just the first How to Train Your Dragon and also the first Lilo and Stitch. Both of them have been heavily franchised since. But the first movie from each series was directed by this duo. And I also realized this is our third episode that we're recording, and it's the third straight episode where one movie we're talking about has is based on a book that neither of us have read, and the other one is a completely original IP. The one based on a book this week is How to Train Your Dragon, which is based on a kid's book that I think was significantly more aimed at a younger audience. I was reading a little bit more about it, and a lot of liberties were taken with the story, whereas Lilo and Stitch was an original idea from director Chris Sanders in the 1980s, and he wanted to make that movie for a long time, and then finally got the chance during Disney's experimental era in the early 2000s when they started playing around a little bit more with computers. This is the era where they did Dinosaur, which is like CGI dinosaurs in a photorealistic background, and this is Lilo and Stitch is one of the more mainstream entries of this not super popular era of Disney. You have like entries like Atlantis, The Lost Empire, or Treasure Island, Chicken Little. Not too long after, they're movies that people don't. I mean, they certainly have their followings, but they don't hit the mainstream. They're not as ubiquitous as Lilo and Stitch is.
They're not Lion King, you know.
No, and neither is Lilo and Stitch, to be frank, which is interesting that they're choosing it as a live-action vehicle, and less so for How to Train Your Dragon, which is really the only DreamWorks animation movie you can adapt. Because you're not going to give Madagascar live action photorealistic Lion King treatment, although that would be an excellent exercise in nightmare fuel.
I think they should just have like Ben Stiller and Chris Rock like dress up as animals and like do face paint and stuff like that and stick them on an island and see how it turns out.
Right. Yeah, I think they should just do the thing where there's just people in costumes, and like, Marty the Zebra is like two guys in a zebra costume. That would be...
You basically make it like the the island of Dr. Moreau, and just have people in like weird get-ups and everything. It's just a total mess. So we should probably talk a little bit about our histories with these movies, because we're going into this with there's a little bit of ignorance on my part, because I had not seen Lilo and Stitch until like last week. This is one of those movies that, I mean, I literally told my partner's brother that I hadn't seen it at a dinner 2 nights ago, and it was just like, dropped his mouth. It was like, are you serious? Like, you love movies, you haven't seen Lilo and Stitch?
It's one of those. Yeah, is Lilo and Stitch really one of those movies? It
is now. It is, I think, with people who grew up with it. It's like one of those things where it's like, and it has been so franchised too. Like, there's so many sequels. Right. I actually watched Stitch Has a Glitch just for fun after I watched the first one. And if I get any plot elements mixed up between the two, it's because I watched them like back to back. So, but yeah, I think it has a special place in a very maybe select group of people's hearts. Although I think the fact that they're remaking it maybe a testament to just how enduring like its popularity is.
Stitch is a hugely popular character. I mean, in Japan, he's about as I think he's more popular than Mickey Mouse. He's kind of like the face of Disney over there.
I did not know that.
From what I understand, I've never been to Japan myself, but I've got a little tool called the internet that I was reading about it on.
Perfect.
Lilo and Stitch for me, I saw it a handful of times growing up as well. It came out in 2002, so I was only 3 years old. I don't have that like really young relationship with it, but I kind of sought it out. I think I don't know, sometime probably around the time that How to Train Your Dragon came out, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
So around like 2010, that kind of time. So I would say that I grew up with it. I enjoy it a lot. This is a very special episode for me. These are both movies that I grew up with, because How to Train Your Dragon, I'm positive I saw in theaters. I saw every entry in the series in theaters. And I liked them growing up. I really liked them. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I realized that I really liked them, like especially the first entry. And I have my mom and I have sort of a relationship through these movies as well. We saw each one of them in theaters together. We both really love the first one, and my mom's the kind of person who, every year she wants to rewatch only a certain handful of movies. Lord of the Rings, the Harry Potter movies, for some reason, Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy she'll also throw in there.
That's awesome.
And How to Train Your Dragon as well. We can watch those at any point. So I absolutely grew up with both of these.
Wow.
Yeah. Now tell me your relationship with How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah, I had seen How to Train Your Dragon once before. I'd seen it in college, and it made an impression on me. Like, I remember liking it and finding it kind of a step above like typical like kind of like children's animation fare and stuff like that. And especially the ending of the movie kind of struck me as a little like heavier, like emotionally, than a lot of movies of its ilk. So I kept an open mind going into this episode. You recommended these two, and not knowing enough about Lilo and Stitch, and then sort of being a little foggy on How to Train Your Dragon. When I actually watched these two and went into it, the comparisons are like countless. Like, there's so many similarities, and not just from the fact that they're directed by the same two guys, but like there's tons of plot similarities, and there are. There's the whole kind of found family thing, but specifically in relation to like a pet. Like, both of these movies are about pets, I think, right? Like, Stitch he's a dog, right?
They're about like the human animal connection. The way that I look at Stitch and Toothless, the way I separate them is kind of like Stitch is as much of a dog as he is like the problem child, basically. I mean, as soon as he's brought home to Nani and Lilo's house, he just, tears everything up like a bad dog would.
Right.
But at the same time, he also like, I remember when I was a kid and I had like all these toys, stuffed animals, cars, and I would like throw them around. I'd hit the walls with them and stuff. My mom in particular was like, if you take better care of your toys, they're going to last longer as you get older. And I was like, I don't care. This car's going to explode. And I'd throw it across the room. That's like, I think a lot of kids can relate to Stitch as they are really rambunctious and really young, versus Toothless, who I think is the embodiment of the amount of intelligence and empathy we project onto our animals. I think he perfectly embodies that. I think, the animal motifs for Toothless, Stitch can talk, essentially. He can communicate with people as he sort of starts to do towards the end of the movie.
Occasionally
selectively through small phrases. Toothless cannot, but they communicate non-verbally through just this bond that they create throughout this movie, which I think is very special. And I also think that both of these movies have in common that they're very simple stories, and they're really about like one or two really essential relationships, and the rest of the story is kind of happening around those relationships.
Yes.
Lilo and Stitch is obviously about Lilo and Stitch, and it's about Lilo and Nani, and that's the main two, versus How to Train Your Dragon, which is primarily, I would argue, about Hiccup and Toothless. That's the most important relationship. And then also Hiccup and his father, Stoic the Vast, who is the village leader, is pretty important as well. It's punctuated at a lot of plot points. It's the dramatic through line, whereas most of the movie is about the evolving relationship between Toothless and Hiccup.
Yeah, and I was sort of somewhat jesting earlier that this is like, these are both, I think, man versus society narratives. I mean, if you go back to your literature classes in like high school, remember it was like man versus man, man versus God, man versus society. Because there is like a very like, especially How to Train Your Dragon, where it's like no one on the island of Berk, like they are like fundamentally against the idea of treating dragons as anything other than pests. You have a little bit less of an issue with Lilo and Stitch in terms of like, no one in Hawaii is like, oh, we hate aliens and we have to kill aliens. but there's still like the threat of like, you don't necessarily want to just reveal to the world that Lilo has a pet alien. And then there's also the through line of the whole like the government.
The like Galactic Federation. Yeah, I mean, they consider Stitch an abomination in the same way kind of the Vikings consider the dragons as abominations and singular threats. You know?
Yes, and not only that, the government considers Stitch an abomination in the same way that like the Child Protective Services guy. It's his name is Bubbles, right? Is that right? Mr.
Cobra Bubbles.
Cobra
yes.
Bubbles. What an awesome name. He considers Lilo something of an abomination, like in terms of like her living situation. Like he represents a greater force. He represents like a societal force that is trying to take her away. So there's those parallels in both of their storylines that also intersect with the storyline with Hiccup and How to Train Your Dragon. Once again, you know, one of those just similarities where I was watching these movies and I'm like, wow, they're very similar. They also both take place on islands. That's just a superficial similarity that I feel like is important. Although one island is a lot more inviting, I feel like.
Well, they're also like, you know, there are characters that are trapped on these islands too, that are kind of forced to bond with the protagonists because their primary purpose, you know, Stitch is to destroy. He wants to be in an urban environment where he can just wreak havoc. Whereas Toothless, like, is mysterious. We don't know exactly what he does. He's a wild animal, but he is trapped in basically a big cage. He ends up in this big pit with a little pond, and that's where Hiccup starts going to visit him and starts like learning more about him. So even the plot elements, I also think that both of these movies have those, like, obviously they're family movies and they have these like kind of comic relief characters. Some play better than others, and I think that the ones that play the best are kind of paired with the more serious characters. Like Gobber is a Viking in How to Train Your Dragon. He's voiced by Craig Ferguson. He's like plucky, but he's also like a really competent fighter and tutor for the recruits they're trying to teach about dealing with dragons. And he plays really well with Stoic, because Stoic is pretty much, as his name suggests, he's a very serious character.
Yes.
And Gobber's just there like trying to fish one of his stone teeth out of a mug.
Stoic is sort of like the fun, or not Stoic, Gobber is sort of like the fun uncle to Stoic.
Yeah.
Who is like, the very stern father, the very stern patriarch of the movie.
Yeah. I love the relationships in these movies too. I mean, I think they are so... They say so much with so little. These are really tight movies. They're compact. None of them stretch up to 2 hours. I mean, I think they're pretty solid around the 90 or 100-minute mark. To me, How to Train Your Dragon has always been this really like... And the more I was reading about it on the internet, the more I'm kind of seeing how it feels like a really big movie to me, because they're stretching a lot of the technicals, like the lighting techniques that they employ, and the sound and the score that's going at the same time. Sanders and DeBlois, they recruited Roger Deakins to be like a lighting consultant, basically.
Yes.
Which you don't really get 3D techniques applied to 2D animation until I'm gonna say until like Klaus in 2019, so like almost 10 years after How to Train Your Dragon, almost 20 after Lilo and Stitch. So they were really able to play in these 3D spaces in a really interesting way, and it gives the movie this element of like, yes, it's animated and the characters look like cartoons and they have like these really comical designs, but there's this realism to it's like a dramatic realism to the lighting.
Yes.
And
the fog, the environment. Yes. I think and honestly, when watching these and having in the back of my head that they're doing these live action remakes, I'm like, I can kind of see a live action remake of How to Train Your Dragon. Not because I think it needs to be told, but I can see where they've drawn inspiration from live action elements, whereas something like Lilo and Stitch is far more cartoonish. You know, I think it has like the hand-drawn animated like backgrounds and all that stuff.
Yeah, it still has the map painting backgrounds and everything.
It feels very traditional. It feels very of its medium. And
which is I really like the design of Lilo and Stitch too. Like it's Sanders, Chris Sanders has like this style that's like all the people look like bugs, you know, their eyes are laid out. The guns do like they shoot this gooey kind of discharge.
There's like a weird kind of like sea critter motif in all of his creatures too, like the what's his name, Gantu, I think he's like a big shark.
Gantu,
and then there's like the little hammerhead lieutenant that is watching Stitch.
Well, they like I was reading that they really Chris wanted to inject his like drawing style. And Chris Sanders is like very active online. There's kind of a Tumblr aesthetic to Lilo and Stitch a little bit. I think it was huge on Tumblr back in the day.
Yeah.
And Sanders has an active DeviantArt account that he still posts on. And his characters have very, I used the word ubiquitous earlier in reference to Lilo and Stitch, but they have ubiquitous designs. They're really iconic. And he wanted to translate his style into that super fluid Disney traditional animation. And How to Train Your Dragon is sort of an opposite, where they're playing in 3D for the first time. And the characters are, the Vikings are like just these big meatheads, basically. But there's still like something a lot more humanoid, I think, about their designs, would you say?
Yeah, I would say, for me personally, watching How to Train Your Dragons, I feel like the designs for all the characters are less memorable, except for Toothless, who, like, that character design really sticks out to me, and we can maybe talk about that a little bit. Whereas Lilo and Stitch, it felt to me like every character was more well defined. I thought it was a little less conventionally, like, just in terms of the character design, not the animation, but like, yeah, everybody in that movie sticks out to me. The rounded kind of shapes and everything, the fluid kind of movements. It's a very distinct looking movie. How to Train Your Dragon, like I said, does have those distinctions in terms of like the lighting, the fog, the environment. I think it really sets up like a chilly, like, it's very tactile. It has a nice kind of texture to it. The character designs don't really stick out to me as much, especially a lot of the dragon designs, except for the little fat ones, the little bumblebee looking ones, the
Gronkles.
The Gronkles. I was calling them the Grundles, but those things are great.
Behind these doors are just a few of the many species you will learn to fight. The deadly Nada.
Speed 8, armor 16.
The hideous Zippleback.
11 stealth times 2.
The monstrous Nightmare.
Firepower 15.
The terrible Terror.
Attack 8, venom 12.
Can you stop that? And the Gronkle.
In sequels to How to Train Your Dragon, which I will try not to talk too much about, and Sanders departs. He's not directing and writing with DeBlois in the sequels. I think you get a little bit less sort of angular character designs in the sequels, and they try to make the humans more humanoid, and the animation obviously gets better. I mean, this came out in 2010, and it still looks good. I don't think it looks amazing. It doesn't even look as good as films that were coming out at the time. Like, I think Shrek 4 was around this time too, and the animation in Shrek 4 is better than the movie deserves, I would say.
Is that Shrek Forever After? Is that what that was?
Yeah, the final chapter.
I'm such a Shrek head.
And then you get Lilo and Stitch doing this, like, I mean, 2D animation was almost out the door at this point, and it's just almost like a relic. It has those matte paintings. It doesn't use too much of that super conspicuous CGI. There's still a little bit in the third act.
Lilo and Stitch is very comfy, and that nostalgic, like, kind of sentimental, flair. I mean, there's the whole Elvis, like, through line and everything, and you're literally in paradise. Like, it feels like a very comfy, cozy movie, and that's reflected, in the animation. And I feel like, the way How to Train Your Dragon is it's just not quite up to par, I think, in a lot of ways for me compared to Lilo and Stitch.
Just animation-wise?
Animation-wise, yeah. I think I had I just wasn't as moved, I think, by the animation. I did really like I said, I love the fog. I love the lights. I thought all that was really great. The fire effects, some of that stuff was really cool. I love like the fuzzy, like, garments that the Vikings are wearing and stuff.
Right.
Like I love stuff like that. The textures in the movie I really liked.
I think there are certain scenes where they like kind of pull out the big guns, like during the test flight montage, and then eventually when Astrid is kind of forced on the back of Toothless as well, and they have that really romantic moment. That's when, and those are the parts where the colors pop the most too.
That's
How to Train Your Dragon isn't a very like overly saturated movie in the sense that a lot of other cartoons are, and even like CGI cartoons today have cartoonier aspects to them. I think around the time that Soul came out and Pixar was getting the textures like so like scarily accurate, but they still had really cartoony designs. People were starting to get like sort of uncanny valley feel for it. And so if you want those really good textures, a lot of the times you'll make really cartoony characters like we see in like Luca or that new Pixar show that they just dropped on Disney Plus, or something like the Peanuts. You know, the Peanuts movie that emulates the style of the original cartoons. Like you start getting really creative. That painted CGI thing that like the Mitchells versus the Machines and the Wild Robot did. That's really popular now, and it's really gorgeous. But there is sort of a it sort of does feel like doing the same thing.
Yeah, there's a sameness, and I think that's just a trend in entertainment in general.
Yeah.
Where you have movies that come out and sort of set a standard, and then that's like how movies were supposed to look for a while until something, that's like the Spider-Verse. When that came out, that really changed. That was like a quantum shift in the way people expected animated films to look. And now every animated movie kind of looks like Spider-Verse a little bit, and I'm getting a little irritated about it.
Which kind of makes How to Train Your Dragon stand out a little bit on the rewatch, I would say, just because it's they don't try to make things like super, I guess, like realistic in that way. They have to add some extra flair to it. Yeah. And How to Train Your Dragon is just trying to look as good as it can in 2010. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about, I think, sort of the family dynamics that both of these movies cover.
Okay.
And one thing, they're inversions in a way, because Lilo and Stitch is about two sisters, and How to Train Your Dragon is about a father and a son. There are no mothers in either of these movies. Mothers are missing. The father's missing in Lilo and Stitch. And the way that Lilo and Stitch was marketed from the beginning was that like it was this huge departure for Disney movies. It was like it featured a modern working class protagonist of color before The Princess and the Frog did. A female protagonist without a love interest before Brave, unconditional love between two sisters before Frozen, science fiction before Big Hero 6, and central cast of native Pacific Islanders before Moana. Like, It was ahead of the curve in all of those departments. And it was trying in its marketing to really, like, they would throw Stitch in a bunch of classic Disney scenes, like the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast or the magic carpet scene in Aladdin. He would just show up and, like, just, like, wreak havoc. And so it's doing that thing where it's trying to establish that it's something new. It's something different that Disney is trying to do from the get-go.
Right.
And I think it's sort of reflected in the family it decides to portray. It's not a family that I think had a lot of representation on screen, like an older sister taking care of her younger sibling.
Yeah, I was definitely taken by that aspect of the film. That might actually be my favorite sort of relationship between both films. The relationship between Nani and Lilo. I was surprised. I thought that was ahead of its time, and the whole found family aspect at the end of Lilo and Stitch. It really is a patchwork of, you have Nani and Lilo, you have Stitch, and you have who's his creators? What's his creator's name?
Jumba. Jumba, I think.
Jumba, who's like a Russian scientist, and Pleakley, who is probably my favorite character in Lilo and Stitch. No! He's great.
Crazy head! I love doing the Pleakley voice so much.
Pleakley's great. He's and I love his little, like, he dresses as a woman and everything, and Jumba's dressed as like his husband, and I like their little dynamic. And then you have even like Cobra Bubbles, I think, is like kind of part of the family at the end too, and it's a real patchwork of just like misfits who just somehow come together because everything's just cozy and happy. And How to Train Your Dragon is definitely it's a little bit different in terms of everybody coming together at the end, because it's more just like, I mean, I don't want to say like they're subjugating the dragons, because I wouldn't go that far. They're mutually benefiting each other, right? Because like the Vikings take care of the dragons, and the dragons are finding food for the Vikings, right? Like,
right, yeah.
But it isn't as patchwork. It isn't as like sort of break the mold, I think, as Lilo and Stitch.
Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind. But if you want to leave, you can. I'll remember you, though. I remember everyone that leaves.
Part of like what was so interesting about the marketing tactics for trying to make Lilo and Stitch seem so unconventional before people even saw it was like when you have they refer to it in movie as a broken family. Lilo calls it that, Stitch calls it that. And like when you are a child and you're looking up to your parents often make these boundaries that like, there's certain things you don't joke about with your parents. You have to show a level of respect. It's different per household, but when it's your sibling that is your authority figure, those lines I think are a little bit blurrier. And a lot of Lilo and Stitch is like, trying to embrace the beauty in the things that are more unconventional. Lilo takes pictures of these tourists and hangs them up in the house, and they're just like these grotesque caricatures of visitors to Hawaii. There's a lot of little jokes, like when they're taking the picture by the volcano and the truck like runs into the sign. I don't know. It's they're just a background joke, basically.
Yes.
But it's about finding the beauty in a lot of those things. It's about finding the beauty in the void of convention that exists whenever, sort of the rock that is your parents is taken out of the equation.
Right,
And I think those themes are handled remarkably well in this movie. Nani would probably be my favorite character if I just didn't love Stitch so much and all those little mannerisms that he does. Like, he's so expressive anytime he's like moving his head around like a I don't know what animals they actually modeled his.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about that because it's like, I think koala bear, like definitely there's some koala bear in there.
Definitely.
He's also like a little bug because he has like 6 arms, or he has 6 limbs or whatever. He's like a little insect. Yeah. But he has all these like, and it was funny, I was watching the movie and I kept waiting for him to turn into, when I first saw him and he had 6 limbs and he had all these little bits and
things
bobs
coming out.
Yeah, I was like, that's not how I know this character as, like when I've seen him in promotional material. And I thought maybe he was like Stitch's evil twin because they were calling him Experiment 626. But no, he has all these goofy elements of animals. And it's funny, you look at like Toothless, and you pointed this out to me when we were talking about this episode. You pointed out to me that like Toothless takes some inspiration from Stitch. Like,
yes, their heads, the shapes of their heads are very similar for sure.
Yeah, they've got like kind of a salamander thing. I think Toothless has the panther thing going on. I think we should talk maybe a little bit about animal, or like the creature design, especially for Toothless, because that was what most impressed me about How to Train Your Dragon. And you mentioned earlier that you felt like Toothless was like the embodiment of like how people see their pets is how you described it.
I think the intelligence and empathy we project onto our pets, because like when you get as close with a pet that you think of it as a member of your family, you kind of want to think that it's thinking similarly to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're like anthropomorphizing.
Yes,
but like,
yes.
You're like personalizing, really. Like you're really putting yourself into the animal. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, for me, it was more specific. Like I was like, that's a cat. Like that's a giant cat that's doing cat things. And we talked about this in an unreleased episode of our podcast, which eventually I'm sure we'll probably release. But The Thing versus...
I just like having a secret little episode to ourselves.
Hey, when we have a giant Patreon and we have all these paying members, we'll release it.
Right.
The Thing versus Alien, the Thalian.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how The Thing is a dog movie and Alien is a cat movie. And we both came to that conclusion like independently too, which was funny. And I think definitely like Lilo and Stitch, like that's a dog movie like through and through, because dogs are rambunctious like that. Dogs are the troubled children of the family in a lot of ways. And How to Train Your Dragon, like there's an aloofness to Toothless and a sort of independence to Toothless that is very much like a cat. Like it's very feline. And what do you think about that? Is that a stretch?
I don't think it's a stretch. Now, because How to Train Your Dragon is so close to me, and I mean Lilo and Stitch too, which you were saying is more of the dog movie anyway. To me, Toothless has a lot of traits that are taken from a lot of animals. Like he hangs upside down like a bat when he sleeps. He rolls around in the grass like a lot of dogs do too.
Cats do that too, though, I will say.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think he is there's also like this sort of role that the dragons end up taking in the society, where dogs traditionally had a lot more practical usage to tribes.
Yeah, that's true. Or horses. There's, I think,
Dogs,
that parallel
they've
there.
got elements of horses too. They saddle up, they ride the dragons.
Right.
I don't think it's too much of a stretch.
It is hard to train a cat. I will say that. It's definitely easier to train a dog.
It's definitely like, it just goes back to being about the human animal connection, kind of, and also just being about, like, both of these movies being about not understanding animals and sort of responding with fear instead of like actually being patient and trying to take the time to empathize with them. I think empathy between species is a huge theme in How to Train Your Dragon. There are some sequences in this movie. My favorite scene is the scene between Hiccup and Toothless. I think the score for the scene is called Forbidden Friendship, and there's no dialogue. It's just the score. It's just the score by John Powell, and it's a beautiful score that builds, and the daylight sort of starts to fade, and it gets to be like, like pinkish, or the sun is setting. No communication, no dialogue between Toothless and Hiccup, and you see the two of them just learn how to trust each other in that moment. That scene to me is so powerful. And if you take it back even before that, you get the scene of Hiccup looking Toothless in the eye after he shoots him down and just kind of coming to the realization that he's hurt this animal that's defenseless in this moment, and he can't bring himself to kill it. And, he reveals later, sort of at the third act switch, that like he sees himself in Toothless. He was scared, and Hiccup is scared for a lot of this movie, but he kind of finds his confidence as he develops a closer relationship with this animal. And I love that. And I love the relationship between him and Astrid too, because Astrid just like prods him all the time. And he responds so confidently by the end of the movie. There's like, after the ships sail away and the Viking leaders they have Toothless, he's like basically cuffed to one of these Viking boats, and there's nothing Hiccup can do. Astrid's just like, wow, you really screwed everything up. And she's just like trying to set him up, like build him up without feeding him what she wants to hear from him. She's like, I know.
She's negging him.
She is. She really is. Like I love Astrid as a character. I think she's great.
Yeah, she's fun. She really comes into her own, especially as the movie goes on. But I love that she is really just not impressed by Hiccup's like ability to train the dragons and everything. That's really, it's different.
No, I think she is. She's just like, she wants to. She was so like rejected him so much at the beginning that she's just kind of like, I'm interested, I'm intrigued, and I want to see what you're going to do next. They have a really interesting relationship, but of course the most interesting to me is the one between Hiccup and Toothless. There are so many times in this movie where I just get teary eyes, and they're not even at sad moments. They're just at these moments where I think everything comes together. They're reveling in the expansion of the atmosphere, the scenes that have the big swelling score and the the lighting and the color, and they're all of these scenes too are practical. They're advancing it. It goes with that tightness that I think is especially prevalent in Sanders' scripts. I think maybe the second two How to Train Your Dragons movies, they I like them, but they don't hit home to me the way that this first one does. And of course, anything Lilo and Stitch after the first movie just kind of gets lost in the sauce. In the series that's based on the show, they kind of like they encounter all of Jumba's other experiments, and they like have to it's like a Monster of the Week kind of thing. And
oh my goodness, it's like X-Files.
Well, it's more like Pokemon. Like it's like the Disney Pokemon basically. And I love that How to Train Your Dragon kind of has that too with the Dragon Log.
Oh yeah.
Which is like, there's just so many similarities between these stories.
Yeah, both very rich like worlds, like ripe for like the world building and just expanding. Yeah, I could definitely see why both these movies spawned like sequels and both TV shows.
Broncle, Zippleback, the Skrill, Bone Napper, Whispering Death. Burnt his victims, victims, buries its victims, chokes its victims, turns its victims inside out. Extremely dangerous, extremely dangerous. Kill on sight, kill on sight, kill on sight.
I think on the subject of just like the comparisons between like I call them like the Pokédexes between these two worlds, I think we can go ahead and get into the questions because I have one sort of right off the bat that covers whether you would be more interested in having like a complete sort of information roster between all of Jumba's experiments, which I guess you just found out exist and you didn't know about from the show.
I think I actually did know. Isn't there like a Yellow Stitch?
Yeah, I think his name is Leroy, and he he's like, you know, he speaks English and everything. He was like either the experiment right before or right after Stitch.
625, 627.
And there's like a pink Stitch too that's like his love interest.
Oh, of course. That makes sense.
Well, okay, and he's blue, she's pink. Can I make it any more obvious? But between the two of them, like between that or like the Dragon manual, which would you be more interested in, you know, flipping through or reading through?
There's definitely more potential variety, I feel like, with Jumba's experiments. Although apparently they're all variations of Stitch.
Not all of them, no.
Oh, okay. If they're not, then I'd probably be more interested in that, because I feel like if you can just you do one stitch, why do you got to make multiple stitches? Just do one stitch and then make the next thing like have 8 legs and like it's a giant like octopus or something. I don't know. But the Dragon Codex, I feel like, I don't know, like the dragons all are pretty similar, right? They all have wings. They all have a tail.
Did you actually watch the credits to How to Train Your Dragon when they were playing? Because there's so many cool, like, just like drawing, like sketches of different types of dragons that play over the credits.
Oh no, dude! I turned it off. No, actually, I'm trying to think. I don't think I did watch the end credits. I did see, like, I like the scene where he's going through the Pokédex of dragons, and there's all these like crazy monsters, like one with like a giant mouth and stuff like that. I thought that was cool, and I like that there's like one dragon that has 2 heads because that's cool. But I don't know. I think, and my passion lies with sci-fi, so I think I would probably rather see the Jumba's little menagerie of animals.
Well, you know he's got at least 626 in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Assuming that like all of his experiments are living creatures, and he's not just like, I'm gonna put 2 types of peanut butter on a sandwich.
Jumbo does seem like the type of person who would like, yeah, if he made a sandwich, he would probably label it an experiment. He'd be very like self-important about it.
Yeah, he'd be really tropey and be like, "This is my evil peanut butter sandwich."
Exactly. What about you? I take it you'd probably rather just see all the dragons?
I would, yeah. I think I really like the designs for the dragons. I haven't watched a lot of How to Train Your Dragon media outside of the movies. I do know that there are some shorts, like theatrical shorts, that there's one called like the Bone Napper Dragon, which like wears the bones of the things that it like kills or something like that. I think it's really cool. I really like the designs. I really like just the visuals that we already see in the first movie. Like I would love to see. I just want to, and you know, just having a book, holding the book. It's got that old smell to it.
It's a really old book, yeah. No, I mean, I have, and you know this about me probably. I'm a big paleontology person, but I also have this real passion for speculative evolution, which is just like, what would happen, for example, if like we turned the clock 40 million years, what would like a weasel evolve into? What would a snail evolve into? You know, like that sort of thing. And like one of my favorite like Nintendo games, I'm not like a gamer or anything, but I love the Pikmin like series because all the little creatures in that, and there's even a Piclopedia where you can scroll through and see all the creatures, and they all have like a certain thing they do in the environment and stuff like that. So I definitely appreciate a robust like ecology in a movie. How to Train Your Dragon would have to be more realistic, right? Because like they're all not just one like type, like one version of each other, whereas like all of the experiments are just like one-offs.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, How to Train Your Dragon would have to like justify why there exists like a bumblebee dragon, like what's its evolutionary purpose. I feel like, which would probably be more interesting.
It's funny you said that because like There's something I caught the last like 2 times I watched this movie, which is like Astrid describes the hive of dragons as like a beehive with the workers and the queen, and I'm like, you guys don't even understand dragons. Like, how do you understand like the hierarchy of a beehive? I don't really know what's going on there, but
yeah, who knows? Maybe Astrid has an apiary just off screen, and we just never
that's
see
true. It's just like
They'll
cut
show
so
it.
many,
They'll show it in the live action version. Don't worry.
yeah, so many lines about like I got to get back to my bees.
Yeah, she comes in with like one of those hats or whatever. That'd be great. All right. Well, in a similar vein to your question, you have the deadly natter, the hideous zippleback, the gronkle. These are real, by the way.
Yeah.
The monstrous nightmare.
These
and
are
the
real
night...
dragons.
These are real. And the Night Fury. I had to look all these up, except for the Night Fury. I remember that because that just sounds so badass. That's like a car like name, Night Fury.
Yeah.
What are you riding? What do you got?
Oh, dude, I'm riding the Night Fury for sure.
Oh my gosh, main character syndrome.
Well,
Okay.
look, you know, like there's this cast of like superfluous Vikings that like Hiccup recruits in the third act, and all of the dragons that they ride are kind of just as superfluous as they are. They're like they're all like, you look at the dragon and you're like, nobody's like, you know, heroically riding into battle on a gronkle. It's got like,
Oh, dude.
oh yeah. I mean, it just
Don't
like
gronkle shame right now. Are you serious?
it's like that's
What's the name of the
Bumblebee
guy
one.
who rides the gronkle? What is that guy's name? Who's like a D&D master?
Oh man, that's like the one I don't know because I
Yeah,
know.
he's not very memorable. He has that one scene where he's labeling the stats, and I was like, he's a D&D guy. I knew
Voiced
that.
by McLovin from Superbad.
Is he really?
He sure is. That's what he's up to these days.
Wow. Okay. Well, How to Train Your Dragon wins then. That's my hard ticket. Okay, I think that's fair. I'd probably ride the hideous Zippleback. I think that's the one with 2 heads.
Oh, you would ride the 2-head one?
Yeah, I do the 2-headed one because like it has 2 heads, and that's better than 1 head. And I think it's also really cool the way it like spits the fumes and then it lights them on fire. I don't get that. I don't understand how that works exactly. Why does it need a second head to do that? All the other dragons can do it with one.
Well, on the subject of just 2025 and you know why these movies are sort of even in the conversation together at the moment, I don't think you're going to see either of these remakes when they're in theaters. And we're recording this in advance, so at least one of them I think will be out by the time this episode releases.
Yeah, Lilo and Stitch will probably be out.
Right. But which one would you be more likely to actually go to the theater and watch?
I would probably prefer to see How to Train Your Dragon because I feel like it's the one that I could justify like existing the most, because it already does take so many inspirations from like live action elements. I mean, if you consult Roger Deakins to help like the look of your movie, like your animated movie, like I feel like that's already drawing from the real world, and I think that you could potentially do something interesting. Now, if they actually got Roger Deakins to be the
To shoot it.
cinematographer on it, I would definitely go see it.
Well, you know, DeBlois actually came back to direct the live action How to Train Your Dragon because he kind of said like the studio wanted to do it and he decided to sign on because like he wanted to make sure they didn't mess it up, basically. So I have confidence in that. The Lilo and Stitch remake is being directed by Dean Fleischerkamp, who did the Marcel the Shell with Shoes On movie, which you know is kind of a reason why I would have some level of confidence in it. But at the same time, like scenes like the Hawaiian roller coaster ride where they're like surfing on the waves and you know, through animation you can make that just the most beautiful and heartfelt sequence where there's just 3 characters on a surfboard doing these impossible camera moves. How can you really show that in live action?
You can't do it. I look at the real ocean and I'm like, I'm not going in there. There's sharks. But I look at an animated, beautiful ocean in Lilo and Stitch and I'm like, you know what, sharks?
I want to be.
They'd be my friend. Yeah. So I think that's definitely my answer. What about you?
Oh yeah, I'm How to Train Your Dragon.
Definitely How to Train Your Dragon.
And I'm gonna go home and watch that with my mom and keep our tradition alive.
Let's see. So Lilo and Stitch, it's a sci-fi genre flick that's set in the tropical paradise of Hawaii, which is great. I feel like that's definitely like a location that you wouldn't traditionally see a sci-fi flick in.
No.
If you could do any genre flick first of all, what genre would it be, and what unconventional location would you set it in?
I think it would be fun. I definitely want to do a movie that's like, and we talked about this in our Deliverance versus Wrong Turn episode. I would love to do a movie that's outdoors, and I think I would like to do it either like on a river or in a mountain, in a rocky mountain terrain. That's what I think I would want to do.
What genre?
Yeah. One of my favorite movies from last year was Good One, which is about a daughter who goes on a hiking trip in the Adirondacks with her dad and her dad's like best friend. And that movie was kind of like a coming of age movie. So I don't want to like directly follow in its footsteps, even though it was very good. So I think it would just kind of be like a hangout movie, like not like a direct comedy or anything, just like people on a hiking trip, having a good time, hanging out, and maybe there's some like, what do you like there, you do the Dazed and Confused thing where it's like there's something life-changing or you got to make some decision when you're done with the trip and maybe you bring it up a little bit, but the primary reason for the movie is to just spend time with these characters while they're here. Okay.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. I definitely could see you doing a movie like that.
Oh, thanks. I mean, we've definitely done similar things in real life.
Yeah.
In a similar vein, I have a question for you about what part of the world you think would have made an interesting alternative landing for Stitch instead of Hawaii.
That's an interesting question. Imagine Germany in the 1930s. No, I would probably do like, I would do something like New York City during like the COVID pandemic, like something where everybody has to be inside and kind of tamped down in some way. Although I don't know, I have no idea how that movie plays out, because I feel like the lesson of Lilo and Stitch is that Stitch should be allowed to be kind of rambunctious, whereas like if you're in a pandemic situation, like you don't want to be like out and about like doing stuff. So it's an entirely different lesson to be learned in that scenario, but I think that would be kind of fun.
Right. Stitch becomes like a conduit to spread COVID-19. Wow, that is a very different movie. That's
yeah. Then they actually do have to exterminate him. They got to put him down.
Oh my God, I regret asking you that question.
All right. This one's really funny. Characters in How to Train Your Dragon have names like Stoic and Tough Nut. What would your stupid Viking name be?
I mean, I have a thing with my girlfriend where like we'll be talking to each other and I'll ask a question that I know the answer to and she'll answer it and I'll just say, I thought so, which developed into calling each other thought so's all the time. So I think my Viking name would be Thought So.
Okay, that's pretty.
What about you?
Dude, I have no idea. I don't think I can compete with Thought So. That's a good one. That kind of has like, I don't know. It almost sounds like you're calling yourself a thought. Do people call people thoughts anymore? Is that a thing?
They don't say thought and they don't say fatso anymore. And so we just kind of combined them into a brand new term.
Wow.
That's non-demeaning.
Tough Nut, Rough Nut. There's one guy named like Slobber or something like that. Like, no, Gobber.
Gobber.
Yeah, everybody's got like a really ugly name.
And I can tell you took intensive notes for this episode.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Anyways, yeah, I don't know what my name would be. It'd be something like Jean or something like T-shirt because I'm wearing one.
Right. Jean T-shirt.
Jean T-shirt.
I have a question for you, which is sort of a multi-part that we can go off of here. We see Toothless display a variety of characteristics, hanging upside down like a bat, chasing lasers like a cat, jumping up and licking your face like a dog. So give me an unseen trait he would also share with any of the following animals. And I'm going to start you off with the penguin.
Oh my God. Like a trait that, if Toothless shared a trait with a penguin, what trait would it be?
Yeah.
God. Yeah, I referenced this in a conversation we had recently, but there's that Werner Herzog documentary about the penguin who wanders into the heart of Antarctica because it has like an existential crisis. I feel like that trait would be a really interesting one to see in Toothless. Like Toothless has depression.
Depressed Toothless? You think Man, are you okay? What's going on, dude? These answers.
I just think it'd be interesting. Like, I don't know. Like, what do they have like Zoloft like on the island of Berk? Like, what do they do?
You know they don't have Zoloft on the island of Berk, and even if they did, it might not be the right SSRI. You know, maybe you don't need an SSRI. Maybe you need like a Wellbutrin or something like that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, he gets like CBT from Gobber or Goober, whatever his name
Goober.
is.
Yeah.
Is his name really Goober?
No,
Goober?
it's Gobber.
Do you have another animal, or is that?
Let me give you one more.
Okay.
How about a snail?
The world's most useless animal. I mean, I get the easy answer would be a shell, right?
He has a shell, like.
Well, he
that we
has
just
like,
didn't see.
He has armor, I guess. I don't know. I'm saying like in a sequel, he develops a shell, like he carries it around. But that's too easy. I feel like, and I don't want to do like the mucus thing because I don't feel like that would add anything to Toothless's character. He just trails mucus everywhere. I'm gonna say the protruding, like the eye, like, you know, when you touch a snail's eye and like it goes back in, like eye stalks.
Man.
Eye stalks. Put eye stalks on Toothless. He's flying around with eye stalks.
Wait a minute, hold on. Oh man, I thought snails had more than one heart. I thought they had like 6 hearts or something like that. I was gonna say to give them like 6 hearts, but no, they have 1 2-chamber heart. So give them a 2-chamber heart, I guess.
This is now a snail fun fact podcast.
All right, give me one more.
Okay, sea cucumber. Yeah.
You can breathe underwater.
Oh, that's boring.
What do you mean? I don't know anything about sea cucumbers. Like, what even is that?
I don't know. I think it's like a snail. I have no idea. It's a mollusk of some sort, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, let's see, sea cucumber.
Sometimes they have little fish that live inside them. I saw that on a documentary. Maybe Toothless could have like a fish that lives inside of him.
Oh, you think there's like a live fish inside of Toothless, even though he like exclusively like eats fish in this movie?
Well, but one of them, one of them made it out.
One of them
It's
gets
fine.
out. It's like in his blood.
Yeah. Maybe there's like sort of like a miniature situation of what's going on in How to Train Your Dragon, where the one fish that lives in Toothless like demands for Toothless to eat other fish so that fish can eat the other fish.
Kind of like
it's sort of like a, you know, it's sort of like a parasitic situation.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, it's the queen and Toothless is the worker.
Exactly, yeah. And then the next How to Train Your Dragon, Hiccup has to get the fish out of Toothless.
He's got to make it through Toothless's shell that he grows in the sequel.
Yeah. Okay, this one's easy. If Stitch were actually a dog, what breed of dog would he be?
You think it's easy?
I feel like to me it's easy. Yeah.
Well, what do you think he is?
He's a mutt.
That's not a breed of dog.
Well, dude, it's the anti-breed. He's not a breed.
You just took the easy way out of your own question.
Well, I said it was easy. You're just sad because you didn't come up with it.
I was going to say like a Jack Russell or something, because they're like the most energetic dog and they can bounce like really high. They can, jump,
they can bounce really high? You mean like jump?
Yeah, I mean they're bouncy dogs.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. Stitch is kind of bouncy.
Well, if you know he's a mix, then he's definitely got Jack Russell in him, you know. But he looks more like a French bulldog. He's got that really stout kind of figure. You know?
Yeah, he's got kind of the flat face of like a French bulldog. I could see that, and the ears. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Him. I like those flat faced, big headed dogs. Those are my favorite.
Well, I guess it's time for me to ask the final question of the night, which is, you got a hard ticket. Mm-hmm. You got to choose between one of these two movies. And I know for me personally, this was a really hard decision, because I feel like these movies are so comparable in so many different ways, and they're both super enjoyable and emotional too. But where's your hard ticket going?
Well, this was actually like more difficult for me than I thought it was going to be. because when I rewatched Lilo and Stitch this past week in preparation for this episode, I was so taken in by how well it handled the themes. I think the last time, and I've seen it a few times, but something really struck a chord with me this past time, and it really, really all connected and came together in a really beautiful way. So it was actually closer than I thought it was going to be. But you know that How to Train Your Dragon is a universal top 10 movie for me. I mean, it is one of my all-time favorites. When I said the Forbidden Friendship scene was one of my favorite scenes, I'm talking like of all time. I can rewatch that scene so many times. So many times watching this movie today, I had just like euphoria. Like by the third act, I was just like, I'd stopped taking my notes and I was just like teary-eyed at every other emotional beat. I love this movie and I love my mom.
I think that's awesome. I did very strongly suspect you were going to pick How to Train Your Dragon. How to Train Your Dragon was on your letterbox like top 4 for a long time, I feel like.
It was, yeah, and I rotate some of the top 10 in and out. It hasn't been on there for a little bit, but you know, it's still like it's in my canonical top 10 right there. I gotta organize that at some point, but it's in there. It's one of my favorites, and I'm really curious where you fell on the spectrum this time.
It was a hard decision.
Well, we don't call a hard ticket for nothing. Sorry.
You have to, yeah. That should just be a sound drop that we just throw in randomly in the episodes. It was a hard ticket. I'm a lover of sci-fi. I really love what Lilo and Stitch is doing with the genre. I love what it's doing with the sister relationship, which I think is a different sort of relationship that I'm used to seeing, especially in a movie like these. The father-son thing I feel like is definitely more well-tread. I think How to Train Your Dragon has some really high highs that I think are probably better than Lilo and Stitch. Like the Forbidden Friendship and just like the meeting and all that stuff. Like I really love those scenes. But I think for this time, I'm going with Lilo and Stitch.
Wow.
And I'm a little surprised by that because I kind of thought,
honestly,
I thought I was going to go with How to Train Your Dragon too, but I had a really fun time with Lilo and Stitch, and it's one that has sat well with me the more I've thought about it after watching it. And also I've seen How to Train Your Dragon twice now, and so I feel like I owe at least another rewatch to Lilo and Stitch.
Fair.
But these movies it's a dead heat. For me, they are so similar. They touch on so many of the same themes, and they have a lot in common with the characters and the plots. It really is just... I mean, Lilo and Stitch came first. I like the animation a little bit more, and I'm more of a sci-fi person. I love that prologue with Stitch outrunning the Galactic Federation, and I love the strange, curvy, gooey, just animation of the characters and all the effects. Like, it's just a fun movie. The Elvis stuff is just kind of like sprinkled on top, and I think that's fun too. I just feel like How to Train Your Dragon is a little bit more... I'm not going to say it's conventional, but I mean, it is, a fantasy film set in medieval Europe. That's not exactly something I've never seen before. It's, it's about dragons and stuff like that. It's just, it's just not quite as exciting to me, I think, as Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, well, that's totally fair. And I'm glad that, if I'm not the one who's going to be choosing it this episode, that one of us ultimately is, because I love both of these movies. And as much as I loved rewatching Lilo and Stitch, I'm afraid it never did stand a chance in my mind. It was... How to Train Your Dragon is an all-timer for me, and I loved revisiting both of them. But all right, we're staying. We have consistently landed on opposite sides of this without talking about it prior, unless far as
every single episode,
every official episode. Now nobody knows about the secret unaired pilot.
That's true. Yeah, can't talk about that one.
But yes,
Yeah, that's kind of remarkable, which is weird because I feel like we have very similar tastes. But I think it also speaks to how similar a lot of these movies are that we're kind of picking.
Yeah.
So no, and I think it makes it more interesting too. So, but next week's episode, or whenever we do our releases, next 2 weeks episode, we're gonna do something that's a little bit more in my wheelhouse. We're gonna do War of the Worlds versus Independence Day for probably the upcoming July 4th holiday. We got 2 alien invasion flicks. Emmerich versus Spielberg, 2 titans of the blockbuster genre. And you haven't seen either one of these movies. So.
I have seen War of the Worlds.
Oh, you have seen. Okay.
But it's been a long time. I've never seen Independence Day.
I'm so excited to talk about it.
Thank you, Aaron Griffin, for composing, mixing, and mastering our theme song, and thank you, Jared Tadlock, for designing our brand elements and keeping our podcast looking fresh. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Jeff Blogus. That's all one word, all lowercase. And follow Tristan at prof_physica. That's PROF_PHYSIKA. Follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky at Hard Ticket Pod. That's all lowercase, all one word, to keep up with us and see what we'll be talking about next. Until then, we'll see you next time.
It's a hard ticket at the movies. Which one will you watch? Let's decide. It's a hard